So today we are going to talk about our kids and kids going back to school and all the kind of craziness that entails. And I remember, so my kids are all in their early 20s. My baby just left home after working for the summer to start her senior year in college. That's another piece of transition this time of year for folks who are having kids go to college, young adults go to college, they're experiencing empty nesting for the first time. So much happening in this August, September timeframe every year. Our focus for the next 2 hours is going to be to talk about our kids, and I'm really looking at um, all ages from preschool to high school, ages of youth. So when I say kids or kiddos or children or youth, just know we're really spanning the entire age range. And we're going to talk about just practical tips on helping understand what they're going through and helping them calm and ease some of the stress and anxiety that comes with back to school. And I often told my kids that the line between excitement, nervousness, anxiety is pretty thin line, right? We often have the same kind of physical responses to all of those emotions, but we tend to look at excitement as a positive emotion and worry or anxiety as a negative emotion. And we just need to know they're feeling it all. I mean, they are feeling it all during this time. So with that, let's jump in. By way of introduction, if you haven't been on one of the monthly webinars before, my name is Monica McConkey, and I have been in the behavioral health field for, gosh, I think this is my 29th or 30th year. I really have to do the math, but it's been a long time. And I've held a variety of positions. The first 12 years of my career, I worked in school-based mental health and then went on to hold positions, more administrative positions. And it kind of came full circle because 5 years ago, I opened a private practice, and now I do a mix of direct service as well as speaking, training, consulting. So very good to be with you. All of my work, my entire 30 years of my career has been in rural. And I love that. I love working with rural populations and rural providers, and and I have a focus or a specialization, I guess you could say, with our agricultural producers and mental health and agriculture. All right. So today we're going to talk just briefly, kind of in general, about stress in kids. We're going to touch on what does a stress response look like in a child and what's happening inside of them and us when we have a stress response. We'll touch briefly on impacts of stress on a child, both in the current as well as looking long term. So we'll talk a little bit about ACEs, and then we're going to get into strategies to help calm, strategies to prepare for back to school. Now, I feel like, in all honesty, I've kind of missed the boat here because I was seeing posts from some of my North Dakota friends that school is starting today in North Dakota, today or yesterday. So I feel like we should have had this. I just have to make a note. If I do this webinar again, we really need to have it in July versus August to give us time to really think through how to prepare. So, okay, Samantha shares tomorrow. It starts in West Fargo. Yeah. So some of the back to school preparation is probably going to be a mute point for some of you because you may have kids or clients or folks you work with and they're already back to school. But no matter what, it's going to help us know our kids better and provide strategies to help them calm, help ease anxiety, and if for us and for them. Again, with all of the webinars I do, my goal is to leave every attendee with some takeaway. And some of you on this webinar are experienced therapists and clinicians who have been in the field for a long time and you work with kids and there's so much you already know. And some of you on this call are coming to us as community members, as parents. And so my hope is that the information that I give you is going to be helpful no matter where you're coming to us from, what your role is, if you're working with kids as your profession, or you're working with kids as a parent or a grandparent or a foster parent or a caretaker. My hope is that there's something for everybody. Okay, we are going to use the Poll Everywhere app to do a number of polls throughout this presentation. If you have um, been a part of trainings in the past with me, this is kind of a common thing we do, and I just love it because unlike chat, it's anonymous. So you can type whatever you want to type, and nobody's going to see who you are. I will also add, if you want to anonymously contact me and not have the rest of the group see your question or comment, just send the chat directly to me, and then I will not read out your name. So let's get set up for polling. So the easiest way is just to grab your cell phone, go to your texting app, and the number you're going to text to is 22333. And the message you're texting is this code, Monica MCCONK 993. So again, if you go to your texting app, the number you're texting to is 22333. The message you're texting is this code, Monica MCCONK 993. I don't believe it has to be in all caps. Once the text goes through, you should receive a text back saying you're part of my session. You don't have to do anything else. We'll just answer polls after that. If you're not having success connecting, every poll we do will have the connection login information at the top of the poll for cell phone or your browser. So this is what it should look like before you hit send. And then again, you should get a pop-up text, or you should get a text saying that you're a part of the session. All right, should we give it a try? Let's give it a try. In one word, describe how you're feeling today. I always hold my breath a little because sometimes there's a little glitch and it doesn't work, but it's working. You're tired. Okay. Glad you're here. Overwhelmed, busy, anxious, motivated, happy, content, calm, stressed. So the words that are bigger are the words that more of you have texted in. So a number of you are overwhelmed, and a number of you are tired, content, busy, anxious, frustrated. Okay, we have Nicole in chat. The texting app is not working for her, but she is grateful. Caffeinated, I hear you. I hear you. It's been a caffeine kind of a day today. All right. So we're kind of all over the place, which is real life stuff, right? So my goal is to keep you engaged and again, give you some tidbits that are helpful to you that you can take away from today's training. All right. How about the next one? This can be a phrase. It doesn't have to be a word. It can be a sentence or a phrase. What memories do you have about going back to school in the beginning of the school year? What memories do you have about going back to school? Go ahead and text those in. What memories do you have about back to school? Back to school in the fall. Okay, we have, whoopsie, whoopsie, whoopsie. Let me get back to that. I'm just gonna move this so I can scroll down. Okay, we have excitement, clothes shopping, back to school shopping. In my day, it was the Montgomery Ward catalog. That dates me. Being with friends, excitement, back to school shopping, excited and anxious. Wow, back to school shopping, getting a new wardrobe. Oh, the smell of waxed floor and new paint in the school. Being nervous, excited to see friends again. And many of us, if we grew up in rural areas, we didn't see friends in the summer. We were pretty isolated. Um, because maybe we lived out in the country and we just didn't, see them around town. I remember being jealous of my town friends because they got to see each other. Excitement, excitement of seeing friends again, school shopping, showing off the new school items, excited, new clothes, the first day breakfast and new clothes. There must have been a special first day breakfast planned. Back to school shopping, excitement, school supplies, nervous, shopping, nervous, seeing friends again, new clothes. Boy, a lot of themes here, right? A lot of similar memories. Sports starting back up, new clothes, new school supplies, not having a lot of money for new clothes or things. So maybe we're going to school without all the new supplies or without the new clothes. We're wearing what we wore last year and maybe it doesn't fit so great, right? Scared, the smell of new package of crayons. A couple in chat. Oh, and the new teacher, memories of new teachers and memories of just being concerned. So interesting. It's predominantly the messages that or the memories that you shared were positive versus the anxiety, the angst, the nervousness. So just an interesting observation. I did that just to try to take us back a little bit to how it felt. And if we won't pull on this, but just think in your mind, how did it feel when you were going back to first day of school in elementary versus first day of school in middle school versus first day of school in high school? And were there differences? And then we have sad that summer is ending. I'm with you there. That memory, that sadness sticks with me to this day. All right. Thanks for participating in that. It's a really interesting time of year, this back to school time. So I thought I'd just kick us off with just a few statistics related to mental health in kids. And these are going to be really brief and more something just to let you know where you can find more information on these specific to North Dakota. So this is from the CDC. And these are um, stats on depression, anxiety, and behavior disorders, United States, all nationwide. And what it shows is that so this would be a percentage that depression, huge spike in our adolescents compared to like the elementary, middle school age. Then we have anxiety. Again, look at the growth in numbers when you compare to depression, kids who feel anxious, 3 to 5 year olds, 6 to 11 year olds, above 6%, and our adolescents above 10%. then the diagnosis of behavior disorders, and that is pretty broad category, right? But it's when we see behavior interfering with functioning. So the numbers shift a little bit where our 6 to 11-year-old elementary and into middle school have the highest rates. Now, looking at some North Dakota specific numbers, I just pulled up a few, but this may be interesting for you to check out. So every state gives our youth the Youth Risk Behavior Surveillance System survey, and it's for middle school and high school students, and it asks questions about a number of things, and I listed some of the things here: the behaviors that contribute to unintentional injuries and violence. So that might be like um, any high risk behaviors, taking rides from strangers, drinking and driving, suicide attempts, things around mental health. It asks questions around sexual behaviors. Well, I just got a question. Will you send out your PowerPoint to those who are here? Yes, I certainly can. I will make a note of that. Sexual behaviors, alcohol, substance use in general, alcohol, not other drug use, tobacco use. How are we eating? Do we eat healthy? Are we physically active? So this survey asks the kids these questions. And you can go on North Dakota Department of Public Instruction, and they have all the results in data format on this information. It's a huge file. But if you go on the national site, they break it down by state and they give us these nice little graphics. So I don't want to overwhelm us with a lot of stats, but just to give a little picture, I pulled out a few from the high school survey. So this is high school versus middle school. And I had it compared to national. So in North Dakota, these are numbers: high school students who felt sad or hopeless. So look at the spike from 2019 to 2021. What fell in the middle of that? The pandemic, right? And that was really parallel to the increase we see nationwide. But that's a huge number. 36% of high school students indicated that they felt sad or hopeless. And there's some definition around that in the survey, like felt sad or hopeless for so many days in the past few weeks, things like that. So, but that's a lot of kids who are feeling sad or hopeless. Then just looking at bullying numbers, this tells me that this is high school now. Middle school could potentially look quite different, but North Dakota significantly above national average until 2019. And then numbers really decreased. Now, granted, we were out of school for a little bit in that time period, but that tells me that schools are doing something to address bullying. It's still 16%, or was in 2021. Electronically bullied, look at that spike in 2017. And then North Dakota students fell actually below the national average, fewer than indicated on the national average that they were being electronically bullied. So again, the hope would be that in some form or fashion, parents, caregivers, schools are addressing this issue successfully. High school students who considered attempting suicide. North Dakota number is the greenish bluish. The national average is the hashed or dashed line. So we've We in North Dakota have followed pretty closely the trajectory of the national average, ending in 2021 at 18.6% of our high school students in North Dakota seriously considered attempting suicide. High number. And then the next step, if you look at kind of the spectrum of suicidal behavior, so there's the thought, and then the next step is making a plan. And again, we follow pretty closely with national trends ending 2021 or the year 2021. 14.8% of students, high school students in North Dakota said they had made a plan. And then high school students who actually attempted suicide. So again, North Dakota is that greenish bluish line. Look at the significant decline from 2017, 2019 down to 2021. What is interesting is we see that trend in many demographics over COVID. There was actually a decline in deaths by suicide. This is talking about attempts. But in 2021, 6.1% of high school students said they attempted, still a very high number, but down from 13% 2 years prior in 2019. That's significant. Okay. Thoughts, comments on just those few stats. The very limited. I just wanted to let you know kind of a picture, a little snapshot of high school, but then also that you can access this information for middle and high school for any, I mean, great for grant writing, reports, proposals, things like that, if you can access that data. All right, let's jump into stress. I'm going to be kind of interchangeably using stress, anxiety, worry through this presentation. And our focus is on back to school, but you can expand this out, which we will do here in our discussion about stress. So just a few notes before we start. Not all stress is bad, right? We have good stress that propels us to perform, that helps us set goals, that helps us build resilience, that propels us on to the next thing, right? The next journey, the next step. So stress is not all bad. It doesn't feel good. But often, if you think about stressors in your life, stress is any pressure that moves. Okay. So if I put stress on my laptop, it would tip over. I'm putting pressure on it till it moves. When you think about us as individuals, not all pressure that causes us to move is bad or negative. Sometimes it's very positive. The alarm going off in the morning, right? Pressure that causes movement, things that are due, bills that have to be paid, whatever. Things that put pressure on us for movement. Same with kids. Sometimes it's homework assignments, sometimes it's sports, sometimes it's help around the house, sometimes it's any goal they've set or what they want to accomplish. So just to kind of frame up that when we say stress, we typically think bad. Not all stress is bad. Stress is pressure that causes movement. When it gets bad is when it's chronic, when it's negative, when there's trauma attached, when it goes beyond someone's ability to cope, which is the next bullet point. So traumatic, excessive, and or chronic stress can negatively affect the way a child thinks, acts, and feels. Children learn how to respond to stress as they grow and develop. We cannot expect our kiddos to respond to stress in the same way we do. Sometimes we don't respond to stress well, but we've had years in our adult lives to develop coping strategies, to develop um, resilience, to develop protective factors, all things that help us field stressors as they get thrown our way. Kids are just learning that. Their thinking brains aren't even fully developed till they're 26. So we need to be careful that when we're telling kids you need to get over it, you need to quit crying, you need to deal with it, you need to whatever, that we're not just putting that on them without also coming next to them and helping them build the skills in order to do it. What is minimally stressful or considered manageable by an adult may not be the same for a child. So how many times as a parent have I just think back how many times I said to my kids, it's not that big of a deal. Like you're making this into a bigger issue than it is. Well, that's coming from my perspective as an adult. To them, it's everything. So think about this in the context of being made fun of in school or going to school after you have a bad haircut or anything that you're walking in late or you don't have your assignment done or things that, we as adults can probably roll with in a little bit of a different way. It consumes our kiddos, consumes them. Walking into school after something's been shared on social media that you wanted to have kept private. Daunting. Okay. Stressors for kids. Gosh, there's a lot of them. These are just general stressors that our kiddos experience. And this picture was from the pandemic. And, the memories that that brings up for some kids potentially could still be triggers going back to school. It'd be an interesting conversation, but we'll talk triggers after a little bit. So, bottom line stressors for kids. This first one is really that baseline of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, basic needs. If kids don't feel safe, if they don't know where they're staying or they don't have a consistent, safe place to stay, they don't know where their stuff is. When I was school-based mental health, there were some kids that every day, there was a call into school telling them a different place to go to, different bus to get on to go to a different place. No consistency, no routine, no stability. Lack of money. Someone mentioned in the poll that they never knew, or I think it was phrased, we couldn't afford the new stuff, the new clothes, the new school supplies. There wasn't enough money. And then food. That is a plus for kids going back to school in many instances. They are getting a breakfast and they're getting a noon meal. And over the summer, that may have been um, not provided or not provided consistently. Life changes, big stressors for kids, moving, starting a new school, parents divorcing or splitting up, death of someone close, um, domestic violence, big traumatic things that can cause overwhelming stress and anxiety in our kids. And then, of course, friends, peer pressure, and bullying. In our poll about memories of starting school, lots of positives about I get to see my friends again. Uh, I haven't seen them all summer, but many of our kids go to school and they don't have a group. And so they spend alone time, they're picked on, um, all the bullying, electronic bullying, um, physical bullying, verbal bullying, you name it. So this was a great relief for some of our kiddos when our schools shut down during COVID. They actually had less stress, less anxiety, felt better, and even had better performance academically because their thinking brains were able to function because the stress of a lot of the friend peer stuff was not present. Negative thoughts about themselves, especially as they get into adolescence, changes in their bodies, and then as they're also getting into adolescence, um, more concern about academics, money, making money, where am I going to work, how am I going to fit work in, and the future. Other things, throw them into chat. I didn't do a poll for this. Other stressors. This is just a very general overview. But what are other stressors that you see kids dealing with that we didn't mention? Go ahead and just throw them into chat. Again, if you want to remain anonymous, you can send it just to me in chat. Domestic violence, change in routine, transition to a new school. Any transitions or changes bring stress. And oftentimes it brings grief. So not fitting in because they haven't been in the classroom with peers. So maybe homeschool kids going into um, a school setting, sports team tryouts. I'm not going to make it. I'm going to underperform. Yeah, that's a big one. Anything else that you can think of that we have not mentioned? Mm, all right, we'll just keep charging forward here. So we're going to talk a bit about the stress response. And although we're talking about kids, I want us to think about what happens to us when we experience a stressor. So we're just going to talk through it here in very simple terms. So the first thing is that there is a stressful incident. But the thing is, it doesn't have to be something that's actually happening. It can be something we're worried about happening. So, like that anticipatory anxiety. So, for kids, worrying about what are people going to think of me, worrying about is the bully going to be on the bus this year, um, worrying about what are my grades going to look like. All these thoughts in anticipation of things not going well. That still sets off a stress response. And so in our brains, the information is sent to this little almond shaped piece called the amygdala. And the amygdala holds memories and emotions. And so when it gets there, it processes and interprets. So, based on history, based on past experiences, is this a dangerous situation? If the amygdala processes it as like, this is dangerous, this is putting your safety in jeopardy in some form or fashion. Then that danger signal is sent to the hypothalamus, which then sends it out through our entire nervous system. And a number of things happen immediately. I mean, this process is like boom, immediate. So all of those things in those bullet points just start in. And so we have that surge in adrenaline, our heart beats faster, our pulse rate and blood pressure go up, our breathing tends to get rapid and shallow, our senses become very sharp, and our body releases glucose and fats to give us energy. What is not in that list of bullet points is thinking. Thinking, rational thought, is not a part of the stress response. So we need to understand that when our kids are stressed, their that amygdala is firing, and that is more developed in their brains than the prefrontal cortex, which is the rational thinking part of their brain. That is shut down. And so they're driven by emotion. They are not thinking rationally. And that part of the brain isn't even fully developed yet. So their capacity to think rationally anyway is diminished. But when they're in a stress response, it is offline. Okay. That then throws us, our kids, into what we call fight or flight, right? That's the normal terminology we use. There's actually 4 stress responses, and I'm going to talk through the 4. The one is fight. So when we have this stress response, there's some almost like outward kind of burst of action or behavior. So this is throwing things, yelling, pushing, um, being argumentative. It's some. It looks like fight, right? Pretty easy to spot. It could be literally fight. You could be hitting somebody, uh, engaging in aggressive behavior. Flight, the flight stress response is when we leave, physically leave, like I can't handle this, I'm leaving, or we leave internally, we kind of turn into ourselves. So we isolate, we can be around people, but we're in flight mode. So we're not engaging, we have disconnected. Then there's freeze, which is really a complete shutdown. Like the inability to verbalize, to take action. Your brain, in an effort to keep yourself safe, is just shutting down your whole system. There is a 4th one that people do not talk about very often, but I actually see quite a bit, and I see it a lot in kids, and that is fawn. And the fawning stress response is all about people pleasing. So you can think of it like an example would be is if there's tension in the home, and let's say the parents are having a verbal argument, and child goes into people pleasing mode. They are trying to get your attention. Look at this. I made you this. Do you like this? Are you mad at me? Why don't we why don't we play a game? Do you want me to bring you something to drink? It's this outpouring of people pleasing. Like how can I try to increase my sense of safety by lowering the tension in the room? We see this in school with kids who become like um teachers helpers. Like they are stressed and their stress response is fawning. So they have attached themselves to the para or the teacher, and they are going to be the one to try to just help and make everything okay in an effort to create safety and ease that stress response. So any of those 4, the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, are all spurred when our brain is telling us that there is danger, that in some form or fashion we are not safe. Now, typically, if we have a stress response, so let's say you're walking and you take a step and there's movement in front of you and it's a snake. I mean, some of you might be all about that and happy. Most of us probably wouldn't be. So we have this, this initial response. All those bullet point things happen to us. When we remove ourselves or the snake leaves, so the danger has passed, then we return to normal levels. Our adrenaline subsides, our heartbeat, pulse rate, blood pressure subside, our breathing goes back to normal. we we return to a baseline level. However, for kids who are in situations where the danger is always present or perceived to be present, they're going to stay in that stress response mode all the time. They're going to be hyper vigilant. They're going to be watching for danger. They're going to be assessing constantly. They're going to be reading people's facial expressions, tone of voice, you name it. People, kids, their peers, constant sensing of danger. If this is happening, how in the world are they supposed to function academically or get their assignments done or even listen and pay attention? Because again, the thinking part of their brain is offline. So another piece of going back to school is, what are those triggers or what are those stressors that put our kids into a stress response mode? And how can we help them prepare for that by talking and at first identifying what is it for them, because sometimes it's very, very unconscious. But the more we talk about it and draw them out, the more we can start to process, which then helps them take that incident and not just think about it, or not just feel it in emotion, but process it through their thinking brain, which then gives them some power and control and helps them calm. Okay, and we'll get more into that when we're talking about helping our child calm. So another piece I want to talk about with the stress response is the vagus nerve, and not Vegas, whatever happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, but VAGUS, Vegas. So I have a little poll here. Whoops. If you go to your text, all you have to do is enter a letter. So the question is, how much do I know about the vagus nerve? A lot. B, some. C, I've heard of it. D, I have no idea what you're talking about. Are we going to Vegas? So where are we at? A, B, C, or D? Okay, and we got um, oh, if you don't happen to have your phone and you want to participate in the polls, you can do on the top, you'll see you can join by web at thepollev.com / and my code. It's okay if that doesn't work for you. I'm just getting some responses through chat, which is fine. Okay, so it looks like the vast majority of you have some knowledge, you've heard about it, and then there are a few that have no idea what I'm talking about, um, which is good. I am not a vagus nerve expert, but there's some very cool stuff uh, about the vagus nerve that helps us look at stress responses and how we can calm those responses. It really is the mind body connection when we're talking about stress or anxiety or positives, good feelings, happy feelings. So let's talk a little bit about what the vagus nerve is. It is a nerve that starts at the base of our brain, like at our brain stem, and it literally connects all of our major organs and muscles. So it connects our vocal cords, it connects our lungs, our heart, our liver, our stomach, all of our major organs. Okay? This is a nerve that runs throughout our body. So that's what the vagus nerve looks like. Now I'm going to read you some quotes that will help you understand what it does in terms of regulating us emotionally, helping us calm down. So vagus means wandering. And the vagus nerve, after it leaves the base of the brain, sends branches to your ears, throat, heart, lungs, digestive tract, with stops along the way at the vocal cords and the diaphragm before descending into the abdomen. It is the duty of the vagus nerve to orchestrate bodily responses to keep you safe or warn you about danger before you've even had a chance to think about it. So that is that automatic stress response. The vagus nerve is responsible for making that happen, taking the messages from the brain and sending it out to your body. So again, like the snake example, you see the snake, you're not thinking, you don't even have time to have a rational thought about your options. Like when we're stepping, there's a snake. There's not even time to like multiple choice. A, do I stand here and just look at it and see if it goes away? B, do I turn around and run? C, do I step on it? We don't do that because our brain is not part of the stress response equation. We immediately go into stress response mode, whether it's fight, flight, freeze, fawn. So it's all about keeping us safe from danger. Without your awareness, the brain scans the environment for cues of danger, pitching you into high alert to fight or flee, or in extreme situations, shutting you down, freeze. It also scans for cues of safety, which allow you enough calm to open you up to engage with others. Okay, so it has both calming and stress response impact, because information flows both to and from the brain via vagal pathways. The vagus nerve can be thought of as a major mind-body highway. Through the vagus nerve, you react to signals in your environment in ways that calm, alarm, or dysregulate the body. And these states, in turn, create emotional experience and play out in behavior. So when you look at little kids playing together, if somebody takes something that belongs to them, immediate acting out, right? Sometimes crying and leaving, sometimes fighting, sometimes just sitting down, shutting down. Um, that is that is all the vagus nerve responding, starting in the brain. The vagus nerve is why your heart races and stomach curdles when you sense a threat, and why your breathing slows and your body relaxes when friends welcome you into their house. So both responses, because it starts in that part of the brain that shares memories and emotions. So it can be you hear a song from your adolescence that brings you just such good memories of hanging out with friends. And then you have that emotional response of happiness, of joy. It could also be you hear a song that was playing in the background when you were physically assaulted or when something bad happened to or around you, and it brings up those memories, and you have that bodily, physical response. This is so important to understand because especially when our kids are younger and don't have a voice, they have a voice. They have a voice from the coming out of the womb, right? They don't have the ability to verbalize what they're experiencing. It's important for us as the adults around them to be watching their responses. Are they shutting down? Are they in fight or flight mode? And instead of disciplining those responses, it's important that we understand the stressor or the trigger that has propelled them into that response. Make sense? So if you have a um, child who doesn't want to get on the bus in the morning and they're throwing a fit and they are, not cooperating, not getting dressed, not eating, and you're frazzled and you're forcing them in the car and getting them out into the school and they're late because they missed the bus. Why don't they want to get on the bus? What is going on, or what has gone on that is driving that stress response? Or do they not want to leave you? I've had kids that are truant because there was domestic violence in the home and they were sure mom was going to get injured if they left. They felt like they had to stay and keep her safe. So it's kind of a puzzle figuring out what's going on for kids, because if they're young enough, they may well not have the language to express what's happening, or they may not even know. One example that I give when I'm talking about this is my son, my middle son, who's 22 now. When he was in kindergarten, he every morning, it wasn't kindergarten either, I'm sorry, it was first grade. Every morning he would wake up and have these like severe stomach aches. And so we were trying everything. It's like, is it lactose intolerant? Is it gluten? Like, what is going on? And then one day, one week actually, he had zero complaints about his stomach. And this was about probably 3 months into the school year. And it just kind of struck me like, what's going on here that all of a sudden now he's feeling okay? And we started talking about what's different, like what's not the same at school. And it turned out that one of the teachers, that they did some switching around like by math groups. And the teacher that had his math group often called kids up to the board to work a little problem. And if they got it wrong, she would kind of talk about it like in front of the class, call them out in a sense. He was terrified of being called out, even though it had never happened. She was on vacation that week. And so he at his little age could not identify, why is my stress response calmed? Why am I not having stomach aches? But when we started diving into it, the thing that was causing the stress, in this case, the practice of one of his teachers, was not in play that week. And thankfully, we figured that out and we could have some conversations with school staff and also him for how to better manage that anxiety or that stress, to bring it to his awareness so that he could start to process it cognitively versus just feeling it emotionally where there was no control. It was just purely a response. Okay, we have a comment in chat. Absolutely makes sense. I wish more people, including teachers, understood better that behavior responses are a form of communication of a need or reaction response for emotional regulation. Yeah, not that rules don't have to be followed. There's got to be order. There's got to be safety. But in order to really help a child change an emotional reaction that's not helpful, we've got to understand why it's happening. And so understanding the stress response, the vagus nerve, how it's all connected helps us so much to know. So in my son's case, he's sensing danger. I'm not going to be safe because I'm going to be embarrassed, humiliated, whatever. And that was on his mind, with unconsciously on his mind every morning when he woke up. So brain sends danger signal. And in his case, it was picked up in his stomach, and that's where he felt pain. So kind of fascinating. We have another comment. I agree about the behavior issue. I have a 4 and 3-year-old that do that a lot. And it complicates things when they're kids because their rational brain is not developed, especially 3 and 4-year-olds. It's all emotion. It's all emotion and behavior. It's our job to help regulate them, to help calm them, to teach them skills to calm, and to help them build resilience when they are encountering something that's difficult. So we will get to that. Gosh, we're already an hour in, you guys. It's going so fast. So, what do stress responses look like in children? In one word, so this is a poll, in one word, what can anxiety in kids look like? Go ahead and text in your word. Crying, acting out, um, sick days. I think they got divided. So sick days, being frustrated, avoiding, outbursts, flight response, yelling, anger, increased behaviors. I think they were separated. Tears, attention seeking, ADHD type of issues. So difficulty focusing, sick, stomach aches, tantrums. We have a few in chat here, not eating, not changes in sleeping, refusing to do chores, ignoring you, fighting, eye rolls, irritability. Okay, yes, good overview. We're going to break it up a little by, oh, here's some more. Um, Trying to figure out what the one-to-one, oh, maybe seeking attention or seeking one-to-one time, headaches, flight response, increased yelling. You have a comment in chat, 4-year-old with ADHD hit and bit, among other behaviors, when having issues expressing herself. Yeah, because they don't have the words. So how can we help them express through play or coloring, or at that age, it's probably not going to be words. It's going to be some type of a behavior. Now, when they get to be older, especially adolescents, we're hoping they do have words. We're hoping that they aren't in the place. I mean, you don't see, if you compare a 3-year-old to a 16-year-old, behavior should look different, right? And it looks different because of their brain development and their ability to regulate themselves, their ability to use their voice and language to ask for help, to process. It's all about that brain development and regulation. So let's break it down by age group, because it can look very different, as we're talking about, among different ages. So what are common, and this doesn't have to be a word, this can be a phrase. So looking at just preschool age children, what are common stress responses? What do they look like? How can you tell that my preschool age child is struggling with a, a stress response? Something is telling them they're not safe, they're not secure, things are not stable. Clinging to you, meltdowns, temper tantrums, lots of behavior, right? Tantrums, lots of tantrums, even more tantrums, hitting, crying at drop off. And you know, when I read that tantrum word, how often you hear people say, like, stop throwing a tantrum. If you're going to throw a tantrum, we're leaving. Is there even that awareness that I'm heading into tantrum area because it's such an automatic response? Angry, screaming outbursts, Other things, stress responses in kids, tears, crying. Okay. You guys really hit on them. I have a few on my list. Some you've already talked about. Decreased appetite where they may just stop eating. I had a little boy once who he was three, maybe 4 years old, when I worked with him, and they had moved, the family had moved to another town for work, and he left his very beloved babysitter, daycare provider. And that little kiddo did not eat for months. I mean, it was like minimal nutrition that his parents could get him to consume because his world had been rocked. He um he felt insecure and unsafe. So we might see appetite changes, the acting out behaviors, stomach aches, not wanting to go to bed or having nightmares during the night, the clinginess, regression. So it may be that they are returning to bedwetting or their potty training has been completed and you think we're on the road to no more diapers, no more pull-ups, and then there's this regression in that's a common milestone that we'll see regression. But other things, even kids wanting their pacifiers back. uh, I'm not thinking of examples right now, but you get what I'm saying. A regression. They may start crawling again. They may not want to walk. They may want to be held all the time. So keep an eye out for that. All right. Going now to elementary age children. So let's say ages 5 to, gosh, like 11, or kids like 11 when they're entering middle school, 10, 11. So that 5, 6 year time span, what are stress responses we see in elementary age children? The physical complaints, headache, stomach ache. Boy, if you're a school nurse in elementary and middle school, bless your heart because you are very busy. Defiance, crying, hitting, throwing, or reporting that they're sick. They're tired. What else? Elementary kiddos, illnesses. So a lot of those, um, you could say psychosomatic responses, right? That I'm sick. Uh, so it's showing itself in a physical sickness. I don't know. I don't know. And they may not know. They probably don't know what's going on or why they're feeling the way they are or why they did what they did. I'm guessing they truly don't know or don't know how to put it into words. They don't know how to verbalize what what happened or why they did what they did. Isolation, so withdrawing, being overwhelmed. Whoops, I think I skipped a few here. Um, so illnesses, tired, I don't know, running away, flight response, yelling, fight response, uh, feeling or acting like they are overwhelmed, aggression towards siblings and our peers and our parents, right? Okay, good list. You hit on some. Elementary, again, appetite changes, complaining. It can be those bodily complaints or just complaining in general, the refusal, resistance, attention-seeking behavior. So they are doing things to get even negative attention. Isolation and withdrawal, behavioral acting out, and then all those physical symptoms, headaches, stomach aches, muscle aches. And newer recurring fears might pop up. So things that they, maybe years ago had fears of. There's something under my bed. There's something in the closet. There's somebody that's going to come get us. Something's going to happen to you when you go to work, or something's going to happen to you when I'm at school. So these phobias or fears you may see a resurgence of. Okay, middle school. So middle school, let's look at like the 11-ish age range, 11 to like 14, 15. Gosh, ninth grade, yeah, like 14, 11, 10, 11 to 14, somewhere in there. So kind of beginning adolescence. What are some stress responses? So we'll see it show up in academics, running away or being defiant, arguing, swearing. They might be trying out some of those lovely words that they might hear mom and dad say, but they're not supposed to say, right? Arguing, boundary pushing. And if there's no boundary there, they will continue to go. Boundaries are a good thing. Talking back, isolating, not refusing to go to school, being truant. I mean, it's not uncommon in this age for kids to be trying out substances for the first time, alcohol, drugs, nicotine, self-harm, refusal to go to bed, to honor a bedtime, get off electronics. Pushing of boundaries is really a good way to put it. So there's a reason boundaries are there, and it's so they will be pushed. It's kind of like the speed limit. Not very many of us drive under it. Most of us know what we can get by with, like 3 to 5 miles per hour, maybe a little more over it. If that boundary wasn't there, the speed limit boundary, what would life look like on the roads? Crazy, chaotic, no sense of safety. Same thing with our kids. They need boundaries to help them feel out where the lines are. Absolutely critical. All right, so a few that I had written down for middle school age. Again, appetite changes. That is across the board. Think of you. Think of you when you're stressed. Food and the consumption of food, the overconsumption of food, the gravitation toward carbs or sugars or what have you, that is that is really a good giveaway that our kids are struggling if they're not eating or if their eating habits change. Are they skipping meals? Are they hoarding food? So watching the appetite, their relationship with food is really important. Sleeping issues, that defiance, the withdrawal, the physical complaints, emotional responses. So again, at this age, that amygdala is rapidly developing. Prefrontal cortex not keeping up with the developing emotional brain. So we see a lot of emotional responses as they're heading into puberty. Nail biting, so some showing of uh, anxiety or stress physically. I've known kids who have pulled out eyebrows or eyelashes, bit nails, tore nails off, scratched themselves. So some type of anxious behavior. And then self-harm, substance use. All right, high school. So 15-ish to 18, 19. What do stress responses look like in our high school kiddos? High risk behavior, driving fast, having unprotected sex, use of substances that they may not have a clue what they are, what's in them, staying out late, appetite changes, defiance, substance use, and physical harm, withdrawing, running off, running away. This is a tricky age, right? Because we're probably relaxing our boundaries a little bit as we help them grow into well-functioning adults. And so boundaries are going to be pushed even further and further and further. Alcohol use, avoiding, I don't feel like talking, I don't want to talk to you. Yes, so easily fatigued, sleep disturbances, tired all the time, wanting to sleep all the time, difficulty getting them to wake up, very emotionally reactive, difficult for them to concentrate. Again, those physical symptoms, aggression, isolation, withdrawal, substance use, and self-harm are a few. Okay, we're going to run through impacts of stress fairly quickly because then I want to get into strategies that can help calm that vagus nerve and that stress response related to back to school stress. And we'll talk a little bit too about some kind of preparation things, even though I've kind of missed the boat because North Dakota is starting school already. Okay, so ACEs, do I have a poll in here? I don't. So for those of you who aren't familiar with ACEs, it stands for the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study. This was a study done, I think, in the 80s in California, and they surveyed adults about experiences those adults had as children. And then they looked at current health outcomes of those adults and linked those health outcomes to adverse experiences. So if a kiddo experienced certain things in their life, they could draw the conclusion that they are at higher risk for different health issues. So uh, any response to stress results in elevated cortisol levels in the brain, and the more severe or prolonged the stress, the longer the elevated chemical levels in the brain persist and affect not only the brain, but also the body. So that's being in that stress response mode chronically over the course of time, never being able to just let your brain and body relax. For a developing brain at an early age, such prolonged elevated chemical levels can cause adverse, even permanent changes to various systems in the body, your immune system, your digestive system. There's a lot of studies around inflammation being tied to stress, as well as the brain potentially impacting memory, attention, and emotions. So again, elevated stress levels, trauma, um, any sensing of I'm not safe, I'm not secure, this is not going to be good for me, this is not going to turn out good for me, throws us into that stress response. And the longer we stay there, the more impact it has to our brains and bodies. So when they did the ACEs study, they asked these people, was there physical, emotional, or sexual abuse that happened to you? Did you experience physical or emotional neglect? In your household, did anyone have mental illness? Was anyone incarcerated? Was the mother treated violently? Was your mother treated violently? Was there substance abuse in your home, or was there divorce in your home? These were the topics around the questions that were asked. What they found was the more of those things a kiddo experienced, the higher their risk of one of these things happening to them in adulthood. So the kids that experienced more of these stressors, we could say, or traumas, the higher their risk in adulthood for not being physically active, smoking, alcoholism, drug use, and missing work, being obese, having diabetes, having depression, experiencing a suicide attempt, having sexually transmitted diseases, being diagnosed with heart disease, cancer, stroke, COPD, and having broken bones. Pretty amazing, groundbreaking study that was done. And there have been, studies since then that confirm that when a child undergoes severe stress or trauma, they are definitely at increased risk in adulthood of these things, these health risks. So I often get the question from parents, is this just a normal phase, right? We know that there are, the terrible twos, and we know that middle school is such a joy, and we know that adolescence can be difficult. So how do we know if this is just normal or is this a problem that my child is experiencing? There's a couple of things to think about there. One is that the signs or symptoms that are disrupting normal functioning are lasting weeks or months. This is not that it's a tough week or a weekend. It's based around a situation, it resolves. The signs or symptoms are lasting weeks and months, and it's interfering with that child's ability to function at home, at school, or with friends. So a couple of just um, guiding principles to know, like, is this normal or is this a problem? All right. We have about 50, I'm sorry, 40 minutes left to just talk about how can we help create calm. We can also term this as co-regulation. Like, we, assuming we are regulated and calm, are helping our child calm. So let's talk a little bit about that. One is, gosh, preparation can be prevention. Preparation is key to just helping that back to school experience go smoothly, reduce stress, and increase, a positive experience. So prior to the first day of school, getting back on some kind of a schedule and on some kind of routine. Summers are hard because it's light out until late, and we're not accustomed to earlier bedtimes or getting up early. And so, helping our kids, really doing them a favor in a few weeks before school starts, even, or I mean, anytime before school starts, when we can start making a move to get them back on some kind of a schedule and some kind of routine, that is going to help the transition so much. One thing to think about before I keep going down my list is when you think about all of the sensory systems in our body, like how we take in information and how much each one of those symptoms are impacted with a change like going back to school. Pretty amazing. So when you think just about our five senses, sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch, when we make the transition back to school, all five of those were kind of overloaded with with differences in every sensory system. There are more than five. I think there are eight that I learned from a really awesome occupational therapist, but I don't remember the other three. So just keep that in mind too, that that life really changes for kids when they go back to school every day. Their sensory systems are going to take a while to fall back into that routine. It's a transition. So the more you can kind of help prep them for that, the easier the transition will be. So getting them back on some kind of a schedule. If you can find out when they're going to be eating lunch, when their lunch schedule is, that is huge. There are some kids that are eating lunch as early as 11 and some that are eating lunch as late as 1. When you're used to being home and grabbing a snack or eating whenever you're hungry, that is huge. Talk about impact in learning because our system is off just with eating schedules. That is really huge. So if you can find out, like, when are they eating, and so we're gonna start having lunch at whatever 11:30, And then your next opportunity for a snack isn't until whatever time, like kind of start gearing them up for that. Okay, trips to the school. Get to the school, do the open house, stop in. Schools are public buildings, especially when teachers are back there, somewhat accessible. Stop in the office, meet the office people, meet administration. If you can meet with your teacher out, even outside of the open house, just spend time in the environment. Go to the playground, go to the football field or the baseball field and just play catch or whatever if they're not being used. Just have a presence in that environment to help with the transition. Play dates with friends. So younger kids that obviously are not driving and have been with friends during the summer, how can you arrange getting them together so that there's some level of comfort in walking in the first day? And then communication. Oh my goodness. Communicate, communicate, communicate with your kiddos. Communicate about things like what the bus ride experience is before they go to school. Okay, it looks like you're going to be on this bus. They're going to be here at this time. Is this the same bus driver you had? Where do you sit on the bus? Who do you sit with? Talk about the bus. If they're shutting down or if they're having some kind of a stress response as you're talking about the bus, it might be a good thing to check into what's going on the bus, because remember, in that amygdala part of their brain, emotions and history, things we've lived through in the past, are linked. So emotions and memories. And so if you're having these conversations and having them talk through these things, it'll be easier for you to spot the trouble areas or potential trouble areas. What do you do before class? That unsupervised time for our middle schoolers, high schoolers, where they're just kind of there, they're off the bus, maybe they've eaten their breakfast. That can be a really stressful time, where there's probably staff watching, but there's probably a lot of things going down that staff doesn't see. Or do they not feel like they have a group to be with? Help them brainstorm. What can before class look like for you? Can you go to the library if you need somewhere to go? Can you, uh, access friends to do something with you? Um, what does that look like if that's a stressor? Communicate with them about lunch, where they sit at lunch. That's a stressor for especially middle and high school too. I'm not in the same lunch as my friend group, so some kids skip lunch. They just don't eat. They go out and sit in their vehicle. That's not good, right? They're not fueling their body to be able to get through the rest of the day. Um, what triggers? We talked about triggers a little bit throughout the presentation. Have there been adverse things that have happened in other school years? Um, have there been emergencies in the school? Has there been a suicide uh, of a student in the school? Have there been things that have happened? Has your child been bullied or assaulted or, there's all kinds of things. But just because something had happened and you feel like we've closed the door on it and this is a new start, a new year, your child could still absolutely be having a stress response when they come up against certain triggers. And it could be very unconscious. Okay. So just trying to put yourself in their place and understand, like, this is what caused them some stress in the past. These are some things that have happened. We need to talk this through and process it. So it's not only living in their emotional stress response hemisphere of the brain, it is crossing over into logical thinking where they can process and be rational. All right, creating calm. So we call it stimulating the vagus nerve, which sounds like it's not what we want to do. We don't want kids to be stimulated, but actually all it is getting the vagus nerve um, stimulated so that it can calm. And there's some very interesting things that make that happen. Some things that can work are chewing gum on both sides of your mouth. So you've got cross body activity, singing or humming, slow, deep breaths coming from like your belly. Sometimes I'll have kids pretend like when they're breathing in, they're breathing in from their stomach, and when they're breathing out, it's like their belly button is touching their spine. And it helps us focus in, it helps us get oxygen to our brain. Dark chocolate, everyone loves to hear that. A piece, though, not a bag. Gargle with regular water, or splashing cold water on your face, or even just drinking water can help stimulate that vagus nerve. So when we feel dysregulated, splashing some cold water on our face can help us calm and get our emotions regulated again. So stimulating the vagus nerve, breathing. We talked a little bit about it, but when you breathe, pretend these are things you can help your kids do. You can also do them. You can do them together. So if you're feeling that anxiousness, these are all things to help them be able to calm that stress response. So pretend you're blowing bubbles through, one of the little bubble blower wands. So not fast. You'll get kids who are dysregulated, and I've done this with groups of kids, and they'll be blowing bubbles. No, no, no. That's not how we're blowing bubbles. Slow, easy bubbles. Okay. Or blow a pinwheel. Pretend you're blowing a pinwheel and making it turn. So long breaths to keep it spinning. Box breathing, you guys may be familiar with that already. It's breathing, you can kind of picture a square or a box. So it's breathing into the count of 4, holding to the count of 4, breathing out to the count of 4, and then pausing or resting to the count of 4. So helping them to regulate their breathing. Because again, when we are in stress response mode, our breathing tends to get rapid and shallow. So it does not help get oxygen to our brain to help us think. Some other things, and I learned so much about this from 2 amazing occupational therapists down in Emmons County, Paula and Kendra, and we co-presented in Linton, Strasburg, and Hazelton. Oh gosh, I think it was in the spring, in the spring before school got out. But there's so many physical activities we can do called brain gym or brain games, which can help regulate our systems, adults and kids. I actually bought a book. It's called Brain Gym. I don't even know if it's in print anymore. I bought it and it came used. But the kind of the guru for Brain Gym is Paul Dennison, Dr. Paul Dennison, Dennison. And he did this book. Paula had a whole manual. There's a little hard to find, but if you are searching for brain games or brain gym, these are things that can be done if you're a teacher or work with groups of kids. These are things that can be done whole classroom before a test, to start the day, to just help calm and regulate. So it is a lot of the brain gym exercises are all about crossing the midline of your body. So moving your hands, feet, or eyes across your midline. And it is all about the hemispheres of the brain and processing. One of the things that you can do, and I wish this was like full body camera, is marching and touching your opposite hand to your opposite knee as you march. deliberately, slowly, just have your kiddo march in place, touching opposite hand to opposite knee. I will tell you that when I have done this with groups of kids, when you have kids in a group sitting on bleachers or chairs or whatever, not hard to pick out the dysregulated kids. They're the ones that can't sit in their chair. They're bothering their peers. They're touching things. They're speaking out. They're dysregulated. When I would do this with a group of kids, those dysregulated kids could not cross midline. When they marched, it was like this, same hand to same knee, no crossing over. Fascinating to watch. And so we'd have to really slow it down, or sometimes you could put like a red sticker on this hand, red sticker on this knee, blue sticker, so that it's like match the reds, match the blues, match the reds, match the blues. But the dysregulated kids, their body resists crossing midline. Really fascinating to watch. These are kids that may seem more like uncoordinated. They don't have like awareness of their own body. They're falling, they're running into things. This kind of stuff is super helpful for that. If you have a school-based occupational therapist, um, they are a world of knowledge, at least the two gals that I have worked with. It was really good. Other crossing the midline exercises, these can be things you do at home, you can do in the car, doesn't matter, is wiping a table, cross, 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 wipe with both hands, get a little work out of them, have them do their chores while they're creating calm and crossing midline, right? But just make sure they're not over here or over here. They have to cross over. I should turn I'm not seeing myself, so I don't know how much of me is showing in camera. Okay. Another thing that is really beneficial when we're talking brain gym, creating calm, regulating, is a lazy figure eight. A lazy eight is kind of like an infinity symbol, okay? Like an eight horizontally. When they are making that lazy eight, either with a marker, a crayon, a pen, that is a great activity to have them do, even like before they get on the bus in the morning. Let's do some lazy eights. Up, 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 up. Draw the lazy eight. Use your non-dominant hand. Do the lazy eight. Use both hands. Do the lazy eight. Pretend your nose is writing on the ceiling. Do the lazy eight. Million ways to do it. Writing in the air, walking in a figure eight pattern, all really good for stimulating that vagus nerve, creating calm and regulating. It's really fascinating stuff. If you ever have the chance to listen to a presentation about tapping, that is also fascinating, where there's like pressure points in our bodies and there are tapping, and I don't know a lot about it. I've seen a couple presentations about it. I have a friend whose therapist helped her with it, and it was amazingly uh, it, impactful. Um, it's understanding that mind-body connection, that we are just not all physical body. We're not all just everything happens in the brain. It is 100% connection. So we can do things physically to help us process better, to help us calm, to help us regulate. These are just some ideas for that. And then using your muscles like some kind of weight. And I know some kids that are dysregulated or struggle with stress use weighted blankets. Um, this is about kind of the word tension is coming to me. I don't know if that's the best word, but things like wall push-ups. So you put your hands on the wall and you are pushing, doing push-ups, not on the floor, but on the wall. A backpack, something with weight that you're carrying, like pushing a vacuum, and be sure to use both dominant and dominant. Pulling a wagon that has weight in it. So use of our muscles. Um, Physical activity, so important for our kids. Sedentary lifestyles, if they have spent the summer on looking at screens, on video games, watching movies, we've got to get them moving to get their brains stimulated again. All right. Okay, someone put a message into chat and it said, along the same lines of tapping, Safe and Sound Protocol, SSP, actually helps too. I have never heard of Safe and Sound Protocol. So I'm going to write that down and do a little research. Thank you for that. Another comment, we like to put on YouTube with some videos that help to get the ants out, such as the floor is lava, move it, among others. Yes, make it fun. It can be fun. Um, and of course, this varies by age, but in adolescence, these are things to teach them to help them self-regulate, and they can pick it up and do it on their own, and it can be a help for them into adulthood. So some other things, helping kids understand what is happening to them, not in the moment, but when they are calm and regulated, helping them understand the fight, flight, freeze, fawn, that there are things happening in your brain and body. And whenever you feel like you're in danger, unsafe, or scared, or nervous, this is why you're having this reaction. So let's talk about it. What's going on inside of you that's causing that? Oh, excuse me. Okay. Narrow their focus. So when life seems really overwhelming, when they're dysregulated, again, works for us too. Let's narrow our focus and just tune into our five senses one at a time. Let's just take a few moments and pay attention to what we're seeing, what shapes we're seeing, what colors we're seeing, what patterns we're seeing, what movement we're seeing. Then go to hearing. Close your eyes. What do you hear right now? Is it loud? Is it soft? Then go to smell. Then go to taste. Then go to touch. And just take a few moments for each one. Tune into those. And that can be a really great regulating tool. Making a plan, especially with, I would say, like upper elementary, middle school, high school, when there is a lot of emotion, when things have happened, when they're scared, when they're worried, when they're anxious, hearing them out, listening, not passing judgment, not giving, kind of pat responses like it's not that big of a deal, or you'll get over it, you'll feel better in the morning. Hearing them, active listening, and then let's make a plan. Let's make a plan for how we should deal with this. And what that does is it helps take it out of the emotional realm, and it stimulates the thinking, rational, cognitive part of the brain. Use humor when appropriate. Again, in the heat of the moment, if they're upset, if they're angry, if they're overwhelmed, might not be the time to use humor. You have to know your kiddo and what works. But humor can help to at least momentarily distract them from what is dysregulating their emotions. And that distraction then will allow you to be able to help them calm and have a discussion. Reflecting afterwards, if they've had a hard day, if something has happened that is stressful, if they're dysregulated, after the calm has returned, reflecting back is very helpful. Less helpful is if our emotions elevate along with theirs. That would be the opposite of co-regulating, right? We have to work really hard when we are working with kids or there are kids and we're a parent or caregiver, that we maintain our calm, that we maintain emotional regulation. Because again, if we are emotionally up here, our rational thinking, processing brain is offline, which doesn't help if they're also emotionally up here. So sometimes you may need to take a break. Sometimes you may need some alone time, go for a little walk, whatever you need to do. Splash water on your face, take a drink of water, whatever you need to do to help regulate your emotions before you start intervening with your child. Also, statements like calm down or stop crying, not usually helpful. If they could calm down or stop crying, they probably would. But in a stress response, again, their thinking rational brain, not online. And so helping them calm down or helping them regulate is really the goal. And then think about what is less helpful for you when you're upset, when you're frustrated, when you're overwhelmed, when you're scared, when you are anxious. What is not helpful for you, or vice versa, what is helpful, knowing that you obviously can process on a different level than a child, but what doesn't work for you? What's not helpful for you? All right. When little people, I love this quote, when little people are overwhelmed by big emotions, it's our job to share our calm, not to join their chaos. Sometimes that is really hard to do, but so important that we keep ourselves emotionally regulated so that we are not jumping into the midst of their chaos, which isn't going to help anything. All right, opening it up. Additional strategies that help kids calm. What are things, going to your texting app with Pull Everywhere? What are things that you have experienced, that you have tried, that we haven't talked about? I love it when we can learn from each other, but additional strategies that help kids calm. If you can think of some, go ahead and type them in. Give some space. Yeah, if you feel like, there's no safety issues and you can give them space, that's really important. Affirm how they're feeling. Gosh, it seems like you're totally overwhelmed right now, or it seems like you're very frustrated. Give them the words. Hugs and calming music. If they're open to hugs, sometimes it's like, don't touch me. Again, think about what is not helpful for you. There are times when we might be emotionally elevated. It's like, I don't want anybody touching me. I don't want, you know. But if it's a child who craves that, if it's a child who wants that physical contact to increase their security, that might be something that works really well. We have in chat blowing out candles, blowing up balloons, separate from the issue. Let them know it's okay to feel like this. It's not okay to do such and such. It's not okay to hurt people or what have you. Offer a snack or some water. Go for a walk and change locations. Good ideas. Any other ideas? The blowing bubbles. I tell you what, as an adult, I'm all for blowing bubbles. It's very calming, isn't it? I should keep bubbles in my car with me. Anything else? Okay, offer to let them squeeze your hand or squeeze your arm, kind of that tactile pressure. Or if they have some kind of a toy that they can squeeze. All right. This is just my slide to remind all of us to look at ourselves in this process. If we are not okay, if we are not emotionally regulated, our kids are going to struggle with that. So, how can we work to be the healthiest mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, the healthiest we can be? Because that positions us in a much better way to help our kids, clients, in whatever capacity you deal with kiddos. So, some last tips just overall around reducing stress and develop positive coping is don't overschedule. Gosh, there's so many fun things to be involved in now, and the kids may want to do all the things. But is it good for them to do all the things? Let's simplify life for parents and the rest of the family as well as the kids. Pick the priorities, but don't overschedule. Sleep, huge. This is a little chart from the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, and it's endorsed by the American Academy of Pediatrics. And look at those hours. So preschoolers, 3 to 5 years old, should be getting 10 to 13 hours, which includes naps. Uh, Elementary, middle schoolers should be getting 9 to 12 hours of sleep, and our teenagers, 8 to 10. Sleep is absolutely critical for our brains to work, for us to emotionally regulate. Healthy foods, how are they eating? That physical movement, critical in development and emotional regulation. And again, ourselves, model, how do we take care of ourselves? How do we solve problems? If a problem presents itself to us and we may be thrown into a stress response, how do we get back to baseline levels and then problem solve it versus emotionally react to it? How do we cope when things aren't going well? Those are all things our kids are going to pick up from watching us. And then stability, structure, and consistency are the safety nets for kids. If they have stability, they have structure, they have consistency or routine, it helps them to feel safe, to not have stress responses. I mean, they still will because that's normal human life, but they're not going to stay at a chronic stress response mode if there's good, positive stability, structure, consistency, and help with coping and problem solving. All right, a few resources. You may already all know about Parents Lead, such an awesome resource from right here in North Dakota. So free resources. I was trying to think of another word, didn't come to me. So you can go online, lots of good information. I think if they still have them, and someone may know that, there's even like conversation starters. So if it's a child who doesn't really want to talk, or a parent who's like, I don't know what to say or how to bring things up, there's kind of a fun little conversation starter activity that they have. Also some apps, and these are, really suitable, obviously, for us as parents, but also for older kids. There's one called Breathe to Relax. It's all about breathing techniques, breathing strategies to help calm. Another app called Mindfulness Coach, which has strategies and tips and exercising for reducing stress and for coping with thoughts that are not helpful or that are unpleasant. and Virtual Hope Box, which is kind of a fun one because it has things for coping, it has tools for relaxing, it has tools for distraction. And if you are a therapist or counselor, case manager, what have you, and you have clients, you can pull this up. You can kind of give some homework based on the elements in this app. They can try it out, come back. How did it go? All right, here is my information. Okay, Kayla Stats. Kayla, I think you should probably unmute and just talk a little bit about what you do. But Parents Lead has 3 different versions of the conversation cards. Um, I'm putting you on the spot totally here, Kayla, but if you would like to unmute and just talk about services, supports, that would be great.
Hi, this is Sarah. I don't know. Did that come up that Kayla Stastny said that? Because that was actually Sarah
Was it you?
Capps. That's really weird.
Oh, yes, it did come up
Yes,
as Kayla.
that's so odd. I don't know how I'm under her account. Sorry, Kayla. Yeah, so Parentsly does have 3 different versions of the conversation starter cards, as well as a lot of different tools and resources that we share. Parents, caregivers, professionals who work with youth. I know Monica shared the website, so I feel like whatever population, you could probably find some resource that would be beneficial for you, but also a lot of different like just daily tools and tips that you can like that parents can just throw into like their daily routines. Nothing like beyond amazing that you have to spend a whole lot of time, but just different little things that you can do, like just being present with your kids and just some different tools and tips like in busy lives that parents can utilize. So
Awesome. Thanks so much for that. Jay has put into chat the um, a link for back to school health and well-being resources. How exciting is that? Through the North Dakota Behavioral Health Division. And then we have another link from Lisa, Region 6, crediblemindcom for you to check out. Other resources, let's keep them coming into chat here. These are really good. Again, if I do this next year, I just have to make a note that I'm doing it in July. I'm a Minnesota person, so it's always like day after Labor Day that we start. And that's apparently been ingrained. So a little behind the time here in North Dakota. So just some reminders that the webinar was made possible through the North Dakota Department of Health and Human Services Behavioral Health Division,